Most people think retirement planning is a math problem. How much do I need? What withdrawal rate works? How should I invest? How much do I need in my 401k, my IRA, my taxable account? And yes, that matters. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. The math is usually not the thing that destroys retirement. Human behavior is. More specifically, the wrong information told to the wrong person at the wrong time. That's what blows holes in retirement plans. A guy tells his neighbor he's got $1.20 million saved. A week later, the neighbor wants to borrow $20,000. Another guy tells people at work he's thinking about retiring next year. 3 months later, he gets passed over for a bonus. A woman gives her adult son power of attorney because he's helping with paperwork. 2 years later, her house is reverse mortgaged and she's living in a 1-bedroom apartment. These are not made-up horror stories. These are real patterns. And the pattern is simple. The moment people know something, that changes their incentives around you. The relationship changes. Sometimes subtly, sometimes brutally. But it changes. That is the real rule. So this is not just a video about privacy. It's a video about leverage. It's a video about incentives. It's a video about protecting your future from human nature. Because once you understand that, a lot of your retirement strategy looks different. First, never casually disclose your real retirement balances or your salary. A lot of people confuse financial literacy with financial disclosure. Those are not the same thing. You can talk about investing. You can explain how a 401k works. You can talk about tax strategy, indexing, asset allocation, compounding. That's useful. But the second you say, I've got $750,000 saved, or I make $300,000 a year, you are no longer sharing knowledge. You are changing the emotional math inside the other person's head. And once that happens, you lose control of the frame. If they have less than you, comparison kicks in. Now they feel behind. Now there's tension. Now there's status anxiety. Now there's resentment, or pressure, or a weird sense that you owe something. If they have more than you, you may be the one who starts feeling behind. Now your own behavior changes. Now you start chasing. Now you start justifying bad risk. That's how social comparison distorts judgment. I saw this dynamic over and over. Two friends in their early 50s, similar jobs, having drinks, talking retirement. One says he has $400,000 saved. The other has $800. Zero, you'd think that's just transparency. It isn't. The guy with $800. Zero starts feeling a social debt. He starts thinking maybe he should help. Maybe he should advise. Maybe he should lend. The guy with $400,000 starts recalibrating his self-worth. Maybe he feels embarrassed. Maybe he feels behind. Maybe he starts taking more risk to catch up. Either way, the friendship has changed. And it gets worse. Because people adapt fast to your financial position. At first, they may be impressed. Then, very quickly, your money becomes normal in their head. And once that happens, they start discounting how important that money still is to you. That is where the danger starts. I had a client in his early 60s mention to his brother-in-law that he had around $2 million saved. The brother-in-law never directly asked for cash. That would have been too obvious. Instead, over the next year, he kept bringing him opportunities. A restaurant deal. A rental property partnership. A crypto play. Every pitch came wrapped in the same emotional packaging. I'm bringing this to you because we're family. My client ended up putting around $200. Zero into those deals. 3 years later, every one of them had failed. And the ugliest part? The brother-in-law never really felt bad. because in his mind, the client could afford it. That is how mental accounting works when people know you have money. They don't always think they're hurting you. They think they're pulling from surplus. That is exactly why your real financial numbers should be known by very few people. Your spouse or partner, your financial advisor, your CPA, your estate attorney. Notice the pattern there. Either their life is directly tied to yours, or they have a professional duty to act in your interest. Your neighbor does not. Your coworker does not. Your brother-in-law definitely does not. Second, never announce your retirement or resignation too early. A lot of people think early disclosure is mature, responsible, professional. Sometimes it is. But most people do it way too early, and they do not understand the cost. The moment your employer knows you're leaving, you stop being a long-term asset. Now you are a departing asset. That changes how people allocate opportunity around you. This is not always personal. It's incentive logic. If management has a major project, a promotion rack, a visible assignment, a strategic client relationship, they are more likely to give that to someone who will still be there. That makes sense from their side. From your side, it can wreck the final years of your earning plan. I watched this happen to a guy called Tom. He was 58, running a division at a mid-size company. He started telling people he planned to retire at 60. He was excited. He wanted to share. What happened next was predictable. He started getting excluded from key projects. Not because his boss hated him, because once they knew he had one foot out the door, their incentives changed. Tom's company paid annual bonuses in March, based on the previous year. His plan was built around collecting 2 more bonus cycles before retirement. He had done the math. He expected around $45,000 the first year and enough the second year to bring the total to about $95,000 before he left. Instead, once management knew he was leaving, they had no reason to maximize his upside. That first bonus dropped from an expected $45,000 to $18,000. The next year, his role was restructured 6 months before bonus time, which made him ineligible for the full amount. He got $6,000. So instead of $95, he got $24,000. That is a $71 gap. And this is where people underestimate retirement math. Because $71,000 is not just $71. It is the savings gap. It is the opportunity cost. It is the compounding you lose. It is the extra time you may have to keep working because your retirement timeline no longer fits. One careless disclosure. Years of consequences. And here's the deeper issue. When you tell people you are leaving before you are ready to leave, you are asking them to manage you as if nothing has changed. That is not how humans work. Your boss may still like you. Your coworkers may still be polite. But their behavior will shift because their incentives have shifted. You changed the board while you were still playing the game. That is why your notice window matters. Not when you feel excited. Not when you're tired of your job. Not when you want to speak your truth. When your numbers are locked. When you know what bonuses, vesting schedules, deferred comp, and benefits you still need to capture. When the risk of disclosure is lower than the benefit of professionalism. Usually that window is much later than people think. Because once you become a lame duck, the damage has already started. Third, never hand over legal control too early, especially power of attorney. This one gets dark fast. Because people assume the biggest threats come from strangers. A lot of the time, they don't. They come from family. And the reason family is so dangerous in this context is simple. Family is where self-justification gets strongest. Power of attorney is not inherently bad. It exists for legitimate reasons. If you have a stroke, develop dementia, become incapacitated, someone may need to act on your behalf. That part is real. The problem is not the tool. The problem is timing, incentives, and control. I watched this pattern over and over. An adult child tells an aging parent, "Let's do this now, just in case. It'll make things easier. I'm only trying to help." On the surface, that sounds caring. Underneath, it can become a financial weapon. I had a client, a widow in her mid-70s, with about $900,000 in total assets. Her home was worth around $400,000. Fully paid off. She had roughly $500,000 in investment accounts. Her son, late 40s, not doing great financially, convinced her to give him power of attorney. His pitch sounded reasonable. "Mom, if something happens, I need to be able to pay your bills." 6 months later, he had taken out a reverse mortgage on the house for $200,000. He had pulled another $150,000 from her investment accounts. Then he put both chunks of money into a franchise business that failed within 18 months. Now she had debt against the house. Her investment accounts had dropped to $350,000. Her net wealth was down roughly $250,000. And the ugliest part was psychological, not legal. She could not bring herself to press charges against her own son. So she absorbed the loss. That is how retirement gets quietly downgraded. Not in one dramatic market crash. In a trust decision that should never have been made that early. And here's the real psychological trap. In many of these situations, the family member does not even think of themselves as stealing. They think they are making an early claim on future inheritance. They turn theft into temporary use. They turn abuse into smart family finance. That is self-justification at work. So no, the answer is not never plan. The answer is plan correctly. Use a springing power of attorney if that fits your legal structure. Use something that activates only if incapacity is actually documented. Better yet, where appropriate, use a professional fiduciary instead of a family member whose incentives are already conflicted. Because when someone can both control your money and benefit from your money, the structure is already dangerous. Fourth, never casually reveal what you really think about your boss. This sounds obvious. It isn't. Some of the smartest people make this mistake because they think they are being selective. They think they are venting safely. They're not. Negative opinions travel. And once they travel, they become currency. You tell your spouse over dinner that your boss is incompetent. Your spouse mentions it to a friend. That friend's husband works in the industry. Word gets around. Someone reaches out to you. Now it looks like you may be shopping around. That gets back to your company. Game over. I watched this happen to a guy you'll call Mark. Mid-50s. Senior role in financial services. Roughly $300,000 a year in total comp. 10 years from retirement. Stock options, deferred comp, the whole package. His boss gets replaced by someone younger, someone Mark thinks is clueless. Maybe he was right. That part doesn't even matter. Mark starts venting. Not publicly. Not recklessly. To his wife. To his brother. To one trusted co-worker. Sounds controlled, right? Not for long. The story made its way through social overlap, competitor curiosity, and workplace politics. Eventually his company found out he had been talking to a competitor. They didn't fire him. That would have been too obvious. They restructured his role. Moved him into a lower upside division. Changed his vesting path. Made his position uncomfortable enough that he quit 18 months later. When he left, he forfeited around $400,000 in unvested stock and deferred compensation he would have received if he had stayed another 3 years. That is not the cost of being honest. That is the cost of leaking non-valuable information. Because that's the key point here. Your opinion about your boss is not an appreciating asset. It creates almost no upside. It creates real downside. Sharing it does not improve your pay. It does not improve your security. It does not improve your retirement. It gives you maybe 20 minutes of emotional relief in exchange for months or years of added risk. That trade is terrible. Yes, people need to vent, but you need to be strategic about where that goes. A therapist, fine. A spouse who understands the stakes and keeps things locked down. Maybe. Co-workers, friends in the industry, casual peers. No, because once your private judgment becomes public signal, you no longer control how it gets priced. Fifth, never casually disclose a serious ongoing mental health condition to people who control your economic future. Let me be careful here. This is not a moral statement. It is a strategic one. I am not saying mental health should be stigmatized. I am not saying people should suffer in silence. I am not saying never get help. If you are in crisis, get help immediately. Your life matters more than your job. Full stop. But if we are talking about career strategy inside systems that still price risk unfairly, then the conversation changes. Because in many professional environments, once a serious long-term mental health condition is disclosed to the wrong person, you may not get attacked directly. You may just get quietly reclassified. Higher risk. Less stable. Less promotable. Less safe to bet on. And once that label sits in the room, the incentives around you shift. I watch this happen repeatedly. Someone discloses a chronic condition because they think it explains a rough patch, or because they think honesty will create understanding. Instead, within 6 to 18 months, they are sidelined, downgraded, or gone. I saw one case that makes the point clearly. Hi, guy called James, 52 years old. Director-level role at a tech company. About $280,000 in total comp. $190,000 base, roughly $60,000 bonus. Around $30,000 in stock annually. He planned to work until 65 and expected to accumulate another $2.10 million through savings and investment growth. James had been managing depression for years. Medication, therapy, stable, functional. Then he made a mistake that a lot of capable people make. He mentioned it to his new boss in a one-on-one, thinking it would explain why he had been a little quieter in meetings. The boss sounded supportive, said all the right things. 3 months later, James was passed over for a promotion. 6 months later, his review dropped from exceeds expectations to meets expectations. His bonus was cut to $40,000. A year later, during a reorganization, his role was eliminated. He was offered a lower-level job at $150, or a 6-month severance. He took the severance. At 53, he was suddenly job hunting from a weaker position. He stayed out of work for 8 months. Eventually, he landed at around $170,000 total comp. Run the numbers. From age 52 to 65, he had been on track to make about $3.60 million. On the new path, he would make about $2.20 million. That is roughly a $1.40 million difference. And that still does not fully capture the downstream hit. Less retirement contribution capacity, reduced matching, lost stock vesting, weaker Social Security earnings history. Now again, I am not saying the system is fair. I am saying the system is real. Corporate environments are built to maximize output and minimize perceived risk. Once someone in power tags you as higher risk, even unfairly, your future gets repriced. So what is the smarter move? Get support from professionals. Therapists, psychiatrists, counselors. If you need accommodations, work through protected channels and documented processes. But casual disclosure to a boss or coworker because you hope they will understand? That is often not support. That is exposure. And exposure is expensive. 6. Never share passwords casually. Share access, not raw control. This one sounds tactical, almost too basic. It isn't. Because this is where people can lose money fast. A lot of people do not get financially damaged by elite hackers. They get damaged by familiar people with access. An adult child, a sibling, a partner after a breakup, someone who just needed to log in for a second. Your email is the key ring. If someone has access to your email, they can reset the passwords for your bank, your brokerage account. Your Paimon taps all of it. And a lot of people make this worse by reusing passwords across accounts. So now a password originally shared for convenience turns into financial exposure. That is how helping out becomes why is there money missing? The better structure is simple. Do not share raw passwords casually. Use a proper password manager. Grant access when needed. Keep the password itself hidden. Revoke access when you want. That is how you preserve trust without surrendering control. Because trust should not require helplessness. And convenience is a terrible reason to weaken your financial perimeter. So what do you actually do with all of this? 3 moves. Not generic ones. 3 real moves. First, do an information audit. Write down who knows what. Who knows your savings number? Who knows your salary? Who knows your retirement timeline? Who knows your health vulnerabilities? Who has access to your accounts, documents, or digital systems? Then ask one hard question. If this person knows this, what leverage does it give them over me? If that question makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is information. Use it. Start answering more vaguely. Stop over-explaining. Change the subject. Train people not to expect access to your private financial reality. Second, build your exit timeline backward. Not emotionally. If you plan to retire or leave in the next few years, figure out exactly what compensation still needs to be captured first. Bonuses, equity vesting, deferred comp, benefits, severance terms, anything time sensitive. Then work backward and identify the safest point to disclose. Do not announce first and calculate later. That order destroys leverage. Third, separate trust from control. That applies to legal documents and digital access. Use proper estate planning. Use the right legal triggers. Avoid avoidable conflicts of interest. Use tools that let you grant access without surrendering ownership. Do not let their family do the thinking for you. Family proximity and aligned incentives are not the same thing. Not even close. Let me end here. Retirement is not just about how much money you have. It is about how much control you keep. Control over timing. Control over information. Control over who gets access. Control over who can influence your decisions when you are tired, emotional, vulnerable, or trying to be nice. That is what people miss. They think oversharing is harmless because it feels honest in the moment. But honesty without strategy is not maturity. A lot of the time, it is just leakage. And leakage compounds. Bad trades cost money. Bad disclosures cost leverage. And leverage, once lost, is very hard to rebuild. So this is the real frame. You are not protecting secrets just for the sake of secrecy. You are protecting freedom. You are protecting choice. You are protecting safety. You are protecting the ability to live the second half of your life without being quietly cornered by people whose incentives are no longer aligned with yours. That is what retirement security really is. Not just a number on a screen. Not just a portfolio balance. Not just a withdrawal rate. Control. And here is the one thing it actually tells you to do today. Take out a sheet of paper and make 3 columns. Who knows your money? Who knows your timeline? Who has your access? Then look at every name and ask, is this person aligned with my interests or just close to me? Those are not the same thing. And if you confuse them, retirement gets more expensive than it needs to be.